Wait. Was Drake's statement that Jim Jones is superior to Nas accurate? Similar to Elatic nausea. Nas, Mike. That Nas, indeed. And you know what? He's quite serious. Drake's spiteful nature was already known to us. This is the same guy who released whole albums to disparage his rivals. But co-signing Jim Jones and dragging a hip-hop legend into a feud that wasn't even his will. Yes, this one has a different HITAS. It becomes more crazier. Jim Jones is also not going to back down. He's out here praising Drake the greatest of all time over Nas and discussing Billboard statistics as if they were the 10 Commandments. Jay-Z to all of you. He has essentially been proclaimed the king of rap by men, and he is getting more aggressive with each interview. However, what caused all of this chaos? What caused Drake to change sides in the middle of a match like a villain in WWE? The solution may simply be related to a particular clip album, and a very champagne poppy went completely crazy over a dubious feature from Nas. People, fasten your seatbelts. This isn't your typical rap feud. This is a full-fledged conflict that combines a loyalty test, legacy warfare, and ego war. And it's only going to get messier, I promise. Let's examine the insanity. Let's set the record straight. One day, Jim Jones, yes, ballin' Jim Jones, woke up out of the blue and made the decision to take on Nas, one of the most untouchable characters in hip-hop history. And if it wasn't already astounding, you know what? Jim's right. Nas ain't all that. Drake, Mr. Multi-Platinum, Mr. I Wear My Heart on a Track, appeared out of nowhere. But wait, what? This is the equivalent of spitting in the hip-hop holy grail in an industry that thrives on respect, particularly for icons like Nas. But without hesitation, Drake. As if they had just won a championship, he and Jim are out here clinking glasses. And what the internet was seeing was unbelievable. Let's go back a little. This whole thing began when Jim Jones, who had just finished his normal dramatic antics, boldly announced in an interview that he was hotter than Nas, had done more for the game, and even said that Nas didn't matter until he brought him back into the spotlight. Yes, exactly. As if NS requires a Dipit cosign to trend, he claimed to have made it become viral. Hip-hop enthusiasts were furious. From Atlanta basements to Queensbridge studios, fans worldwide referred to it as diluted. It wasn't just disagreements. They were miming, dragging, and making fun of Jim until he was forgotten. Drake, however, appeared like the protagonist of a revenge film just when it appeared that everything was about to settle. Furthermore, he did more than simply support Jim in private. He made it very evident by openly supporting him, taking photos, making toasts, and expressing his affection for a man who had just disregarded one of hip-hop's most revered names. And now the issue was, why? Why would Drake of all people dive right into this mess? Because if Drake is skilled at anything, it's choosing a side when it fits his story. Particularly when petty retaliation is involved. Nas and Drake were never adversaries. Drake had really publicly commended Nas in interviews. He saw him as an influence, a lyrical legend, and a pioneer. However, all of that admiration vanished when Nas, a project executive who is produced by someone Drake despises, appeared on an upcoming album. At that point, things became personal. Yes, the new Clips album has Nas. Drake was already feeling deceived by that alone. You see, loyalty is one of Drake's main triggers. Additionally, he believes that you are not neutral if you collaborate with Pusha T, the same individual who almost ruined Drake's reputation in a single diss track. You have taken a stance. And there's no better way to react than to support the only rapper who has the audacity to criticize Nas. Drake was discovered in Jim Jones, the ideal vehicle for his annoyance. He didn't even need to utter the words. Jim was the one who spoke, insulted, and yelled the most. Drake only needed to grin and stand by him. And he did precisely that. Riding high on the debate, Jim pushed forward In each interview, he stepped up his game, attacking Billboard figures, claiming Drake was the best of all time, and dismissing Nas as being out of date and overrated. Fans, however, didn't buy it. Not even close. It was a vicious blowback. The notion that Nas is comparable to Jim Jones is ridiculed by the majority of the hip-hop community. They didn't even call it a discussion. That's the punchline, right? People were saying stuff like, that's like comparing a Bentley to a bicycle and Jim Jones better than Nas. There was more disdain than that. Jim even asserted that he was solely responsible for the present buzz surrounding him and that Nas had never gone viral in his life. Nas continued to remain mute and no Instagram subtweets, no tweets, not even a phrase or a bar. Just total, unconcerned quiet. And that quiet was more audible than Jim's words. Jim, however, saw it as a win. He said, "I'm right," which is why he isn't answering. He is unable to dispute my assertions. Drake's backing, in his opinion, was evidence that the culture was changing, that the status quo needed to change, and that he was at last in a position of authority. Drake, on the other hand, is playing chess rather than checkers. Drake didn't only co-sign a crazy viewpoint when he sided with Jim. Since it wasn't simply NS on that Clips album, he placed himself across from Nas and, consequently, across from anyone associated with Push A.T. Who else is featured, you ask? Lamar, Kendrick. The parts of the puzzle suddenly began to fit together. Following one of the most vicious lyrical beatdowns in contemporary rap, Kendrick Lamar destroyed Drake. It wasn't only a feature list, now showing up with Push A and Nas. It was a message, an alliance, a declaration. And it was clearly received by Drake. Drake did what he always does, which is to dominate the narrative, rather than battling it out lyrically. He allowed Jim to go to war with Nas so Drake wouldn't have to, increased his profile, enhanced his voice, and posed with him. It was no coincidence. Drake doesn't make snap decisions. Every image, post, and cosign is calculated. And he did. When he noticed the triumvirate of Kendrick, Pusha, and Nas emerging on the horizon, his strongest suit. Without writing a single word, he created headlines, started a diversion, and returned to the debate. The rest of the world is watching for something else, that Clips album, while he and Jim are the center of attention. Because everyone will be listening for the same thing when it drops. Subliminals. In his verse, Nas even makes reference to Drake. If Kendrick makes even the slightest remark. If, as anticipated, Pusha takes another lyrical swing, Drake's whole strategy will fail. Supporting Jim will no longer appear to be loyal. It will appear desperate. We're currently hanging on. That cliffhanger. Because this goes beyond a few sultry interviews or photos on Instagram. Alliances, legacy, and a lyrical battlefield that is expanding daily are all at play here. And that's only the beginning. We dissect the reactions in the second section. What true fans are saying: Drake's lawsuit against Universal is part of a larger power move that nobody anticipated, according to individuals who claim to know what's happening behind the scenes. Thus, the fire had already begun to burn. However, it wasn't merely a flex when Drake shared that famous picture of him with Jim Jones, in which Jim wrote, "Men of respect, mafia rules, toast to the last ones left." A full-fledged declaration of war, that is. Additionally, if you believed that the supporters would overlook this, you were mistaken. The internet took off. Threads on Twitter become battlegrounds. Conspiracy theories exploded on Reddit forums. People were not only perplexed, but disgusted, as even Facebook antis commented, "This ain't it, Drizzy." Some admirers referred to it as blatantly delusional, while another said, "How are two of the corniest rappers alive out here dissing a lyrical god?" And more people began to ask questions aloud. Is Jim versus Nas the true issue here, or is Drake settling his own scores by using Jim as a pawn? Because, let's be honest, Drake has no problem using deception to maintain his reputation. His 10-year empire has been based on controlling how the world perceives him, not just on hits. The globe has been seeing him take enormous LS at the moment. He started by wiping the floor with Kendrick. Drake's own label, Let It Happen, followed by the release of Not Like Us by Universal Music Group. It was more than just another CD. A cultural nuke was used. Like a summer hymn, it was being spun by DJs. On TikTok, kids were dancing to it. The radio kept playing it. Overnight, it transformed from a diss track to a national soundtrack. Drake did not return the clap. He made no attempt at all. He went directly to court. Yes, exactly. In fact, Drake sued UMG for allegedly allowing Kendrick to release the song through channels that Drake asserts he was meant to manage. You are already aware of the public's opinion. You're able to dish it out but unable to absorb it? Jim Jones is out here doing everything Drake won't do in the meantime. Running his mouth, shooting, absorbing all the smoke, and enjoying Jim's attention. This is a tactic. It's advertising. The dip is set way. Make things chaotic. Sell records. Drake is also relaxing and enabling Jim to serve as his soldier. According to those with knowledge of the matter, Drake has been more enraged than most people understand. Kendrick didn't simply make him feel betrayed. What triggered him? Feel sick. The switch was flicked by that one feature on the Clips CD. Drake had previously regarded Nas as neutral ground, a respected original, and someone who avoided controversy. However, Nas is currently in the studio with two of Drake's most vicious rivals, Pusha and Kendrick Lamar. That wasn't only a cooperation. It was treacherous. And the indicators were already there if you looked closely. He praised Kendrick's album on Instagram a few weeks prior to the release of this Nas feature news, calling him a king and stating that he captures the spirit. The internet went into detective mode just for that. People began making connections between the album's release, the caption, the date, and then, bang, Nas appears on a song produced by Pharrell, who has been pushing Right-Hand Man since the beginning. Is it a coincidence? Not even close. Drake was on the outside looking and all of a sudden, a line had been carved in the sand by the poetic titans, the legends. And you know who stood by himself? What does Drake do, then? Of all people, he connects with Jim Jones. Why? Jim is noisy. Jim is careless. What Drake cannot say, Jim is willing to say. If Drake had made outright fun of Nas, it would have appeared desperate. It is plausible deniability, however, if Jim says it and Drake merely nods in agreement. He may always claim, hey, I didn't say anything. However, the criticism has been unrelenting, and fans aren't stupid. Comments like, Drake's really out here ducking smoke and sending Jim Jones to fight his battles, and this is like sending a squirt gun to a forest fire, were all over social media. One especially nasty tweet said, Jim Jones thinks he's going viral, but he's simply being used like a decoy duck and everyone sees through this. Drake's trying to manipulate the optics, but it's not working this time. People are fed up with his theatrics. Even industry insiders are calling foul. Drake doesn't want lyrical smoke. He wants image control. This is all a publicity stunt. Said another producer who previously worked with both Drake and Kendrick. Jim Jones isn't exactly regarded as a lyrical heavyweight, however. He has existed for many years. Sure, he's had hits, but it's ridiculous in comparison to Nas. A meme is one, and a poet is the other. The culture is aware that there are degrees to this. On this one, even Nas supporters who don't usually voice their opinions became vocal. Jim posted a weather report on Instagram last week, and one tweet said, Nas dropped Illmatic at 20. Another person stated, Jim Jones is better than Nas. Is this an alternate reality where Dipset won the Cold War? But despite the mockery, Jim is doubling down. He continues to say outrageous things in interviews, such as, Nas has never been this relevant. Indeed, Drake is my spirit animal. This leads us to the most recent development, the interview with Angie Martinez, which Jim has been hinting at for weeks, going viral. In one footage, he states bluntly, if no one is talking about you, respect is meaningless. He asserts that Nas has been out of the public eye for years and only became popular again because he dared to bring him up. In the meantime, Nas hasn't said a single word, not even a mysterious Instagram story, and that silence is potent because Nas doesn't have to answer because he has already demonstrated everything. Decades of classics, Drake is observing everything from a distance, measuring, calculating, and waiting, but insiders say he's shaken. That Kendrick disc hurt, that nauseous feature cut deep, and that Jim alliance is starting to look more and more like a panic move. Some fans believe Drake may still respond with a surprise disc, a feature, or even a bar hidden in his next album. Grammys, international respect, and now even bigger alliances. However, some claim that he won't risk it, especially after what happened with Pusha T. That scar is deep, which is why he's now using legal teams instead of lyricism. Jim, on the other hand, is just happy to be in the conversation and is present everywhere, on podcasts, radio shows, and Twitter Spaces, and he's milking this as if it were his last chance at a headline. In all honesty, though, it might be because, while Drake is playing puppet master, Jim is burning every bridge he has in order to feel significant. You won't want to miss this next part because, if the rumors are accurate, the calm before the storm is about to end. As the smoke keeps rising, the industry is beginning to shift quietly, cautiously. Behind the scenes, managers are making phone calls. Coming up in his video, we're diving headfirst into the fallout, the lawsuits, the industry whispers, the rumored retaliation tracks, and the terrifying possibility that Drake might actually lose everything he's built. The hip-hop community is aware of how quickly things can get ugly when ego, money, and loyalty get twisted together, and this Drake, Jim Jones, Nas triangle situation is turning into the perfect storm. Let's start with Drake. His lawsuit against Universal Music Group isn't just some petty paperwork. This is an artist at war with his own. Publicists are pleading with their artists to stay out of it. Record executives are trying to read between the lines, praying that this doesn't turn into a full-scale conflict. The twist is that Drake is suing over lost power, not just Kendrick Lamar's song Not Like Us, because when the song exploded and UMG did nothing to stop it, that sent a message. Drake doesn't run this game. Label. A label that helped build him. A label that fed the beast for more than 10 years. Now, Drake is essentially accusing them of betrayal, claiming they allowed the song to drop unchecked, despite agreements that supposedly gave him a say in the release process. Drake can't stand that any longer, so he flips the story, aligns himself with Jim Jones, and tries to shift the focus from his legal troubles to a new lyrical argument about who is the greatest, Nas or Drake. It's desperate, it's calculated, and it could backfire. Meanwhile, Jim Jones is stealing the show and running with it like a man who knows the delusion is unreal, but some people are loving it. A few younger fans who aren't familiar with Nas' catalog are actually beginning to question the narrative. Wait, who really is? He's verbally attacking NS fans in every interview, saying he's more relevant than NS, accusing them of being outdated, and calling Drake the most influential artist of the modern era. He even implied that Nas has never faced the kind of criticism he's taking now and that he's the one keeping Nas' name trending. The trick is that Drake doesn't need to win the debate, he just needs to confuse it. He needs enough noise to make it seem like there's a real question here, and with Jim talking non-stop, the distraction is working for the time being. But Nas, he's not playing this game, he's staying quiet, completely. Who has more Billboard hits? Who has the longer run? Who's more global? When fans learned that Nas was working with Pusha T and Kendrick on the upcoming Clips album, everything changed. Before long, the quiet OG was back in the mix, not on the blogs or Instagram, but on the music where it truly matters, and people noticed. Let God Sort Them Out Chandeliers, the song on which Nas appears, hasn't even been released yet, but it's already making Drake's camp nervous, not because it's a diss, but because it places Nas on the side of the opposition. Drake now has to deal with something he's always avoided, isolation. He's no longer the focal point of every significant alliance or the kingmaker. Kendrick is dominating the charts, Pusha's reputation as a cunning tactician is unaffected, and both old and new age fans commend Nas for remaining elegant in the face of chaos, while Drake is perceived as untid, noisy, petty, litigious. The man who once let the music speak now lets the lawsuit speak. There are rumors that Yoongi may sever his relationship with him, that sponsors are withdrawing from tour deals, that internal politics at the label have changed, and that Drake no longer has the same influence. Some claim the lawsuit was a warning shot, while others claim it was a last-ditch effort to gain control. But here's the real deal: Kendrick, Nas, Pusha, and Fel didn't say a word. Fans are calling for Drake to either drop a real disc or just accept the loss with dignity. But he's trying to start a war and no one is showing up, so they're just watching him spin in circles while their albums drop, their projects chart, and their reputations remain intact. And poor Jim, he's out there swinging in the dark, not realizing he's just a pawn in a much bigger game. The respect for Nas is deeper than streaming numbers. It's cultural. He's not just a rapper, he's a storyteller, a visionary, a pioneer. You can't compare viral moments to decades of consistency. RZA once referred to him as the Bobby Fischer of rap, a master strategist, and that analogy is more relevant now than ever, because while he's floating behind cryptic captions, clout-chasing antics, and vague comments, neither of these things are happening, while Jim is playing attack dog.